Why has Afghanistan earned the daunting title of the Graveyard of Empires? Nestled in the heart of Asia, Afghanistan stands as a silent witness to the tides of conquering armies that have swept across its rugged terrains. This land, characterized by its formidable mountains and arid deserts, has been a challenging puzzle for many of history's most formidable empires. From the ancient Persians to the mighty Soviet Union, and even the modern American military, numerous powers have tried to secure this strategic crossroad of cultures. Each came with overwhelming might and the confidence of prior conquests, yet Afghanistan remained unconquered or at best, an unruly dominion. The reasons are manifold. Its topography makes conventional warfare a nightmare. Its fiercely independent people resist external rule, and its complex tribal politics create a shifting mosaic of alliances and enmities. These are but the surface reasons. As we delve deeper into each historical conquest, the intricate story of resilience and resistance becomes clearer. Join us as we unravel the historical layers of invasions and resistance that shaped Afghanistan. Our story begins over 2 millennia ago with the mighty Persian Empire. Under the leadership of Darius I, the Persians extended their reach into the rugged lands that would one day be known as Afghanistan. This was no simple conquest. The mountainous terrain and the intricate web of valleys presented a formidable challenge even for the well-organized Persian military. As the Persians pushed forward, they encountered fierce resistance from local tribes. These tribes were not just defending their homes, they were fighting for their way of life against a foreign invader. The conflict was intense and drawn out, with neither side giving quarter. Later, the baton of empire would pass to Alexander the Great, who also ventured into this tough terrain. Like Darius before him, Alexander found that military prowess alone was not enough. The local tribes, with their deep knowledge of the landscape and guerrilla tactics, turned what seemed like open land into a labyrinth of natural fortresses. Though they established footholds, the Persians never fully subdued the indomitable spirit of the Afghan people. Fast forward to the 7th century, a new power emerges on the horizon. As the winds of change blew from the Arabian Peninsula, the force of Islam began to reshape vast stretches of the known world, including the rugged terrains of Afghanistan. The Islamic conquests were marked by astonishing speed and effectiveness. Armies under the command of the Rashidun Caliphate surged through the region, encountering both stiff resistance and gradual acceptance among the diverse tribes of Afghanistan. This was a period of intense military campaigns and strategic negotiations. The introduction of Islam significantly altered the cultural and religious landscape of Afghanistan. It wasn't just a change in the predominant religion, it brought about a profound transformation in societal norms, laws, and day-to-day life. Islamic principles and the Arabic language began to weave into the local fabric, creating a new, enriched cultural tapestry. Despite these sweeping changes, the indomitable spirit of the Afghan people endured. They adapted and accepted Islam, but their fierce independence and resilience remained intact. Islam took root, yet the Afghan spirit of resistance remained unbroken. In the 13th century, a storm from the east descended upon Afghanistan. The formidable Genghis Khan, at the helm of the Mongol Empire, unleashed a campaign of ferocious might and unmatched strategic mastery, forever altering the landscape of the region. Towns were razed, populations decimated, and the very fabric of Afghan society was put to the torch. Yet the indomitable spirit of the Afghan tribes rose amidst the ashes. These warriors, seasoned by the harshness of their land, engaged in relentless guerrilla warfare. They knew every cave, every pass, and every valley of their rugged terrain, using this knowledge to their advantage against the Mongol invaders. The Mongolian strategy, though brutal, met its match in the resilient guerrilla tactics of the Afghans. Despite the overwhelming force of Genghis Khan and later his descendants, the tribal cohesion and intimate knowledge of the landscape allowed the Afghans to survive and eventually expel the invaders. The Mongols controlled the land but never the people. By the 19th century, a new type of empire showed interest in Afghanistan. The British Empire, already sprawling across several continents, turned its gaze towards the rugged terrain of Afghanistan, driven by the strategic desire to protect its prized Indian territories from potential Russian expansion. This period, often referred to as the Great Game, saw Afghanistan become the chessboard for Anglo-Russian rivalry. The British, sensing the Russian Empire's southward push, aimed to establish a buffer state in Afghanistan to thwart any threat to British India. The First Anglo-Afghan War, which spanned from 1839 to 1842, marked the beginning of this tumultuous relationship. The British, underestimating the complexities of Afghan society and politics, attempted to replace the Afghan ruler with a more compliant figure. This miscalculation led to a disastrous retreat from Kabul, with a British force of 16,000 being reduced to just one survivor by the time they reached the safety of Jalalabad. Not deterred by their initial failure, the British engaged in a second Anglo-Afghan war in 1878. This conflict was sparked by fears of Russian advisors gaining influence in Kabul. Although the British managed to install a friendly ruler and secure some territorial concessions, the victory was marred by fierce Afghan resistance and was far from the decisive control they had hoped for. The Third Anglo-Afghan War in 1919 saw Afghanistan, now under King Amanullah Khan, boldly initiating hostilities to affirm its full independence. This brief conflict ended with the signing of the Treaty of Rawalpindi, which affirmed the sovereignty of Afghanistan and finally brought an end to British ambitions in the region. Each conflict ended with Afghanistan reasserting its sovereignty, further cementing its reputation as unconquerable. The British, despite their vast empire and military prowess, were forced to acknowledge the limits of their power against the indomitable spirit and complex tribal dynamics of Afghanistan, a land that would continue to defy foreign dominion throughout its history. The 20th century brought new challenges, with the Soviet Union stepping into the fray. In late December of 1979, the world watched in astonishment as Soviet tanks rolled into Afghanistan. This marked the beginning of a brutal decade-long conflict that would further cement Afghanistan's reputation as the graveyard of empires. The Soviets had anticipated a quick victory, aiming to prop up a communist government facing internal dissent. However, they underestimated the fierce resistance they would encounter. The Afghan Mujahideen, warriors of various ethnic groups, united in their fight against the foreign invaders. The harsh terrain of Afghanistan, from its snow-capped mountains to its arid deserts, played to the advantage of these local fighters, familiar with every cave and pass. International involvement escalated as the United States, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and others began supporting the Mujahideen. This aid included weapons, training, and funds, turning the conflict into a significant Cold War battleground. The introduction of Stinger missiles by the United States gave the Mujahideen a critical edge against the formidable Soviet air power. As the years wore on, the human and financial costs for the Soviet Union soared. Estimates suggest that 15,000 Soviet soldiers lost their lives, with many more wounded. For Afghanistan, the toll was even more devastating, with hundreds of thousands of civilians killed and millions displaced, creating a profound humanitarian crisis. In 1989, the exhausted Soviet forces withdrew, leaving behind a ravaged landscape and a power vacuum that would plunge Afghanistan into further chaos. The Soviet withdrawal marked another failed attempt by a superpower to control Afghanistan. In the wake of the 21st century, history's eyes turned once again to Afghanistan. The events of September 11, 2001, reshaped the world and marked the beginning of a new chapter in Afghan history. Shortly after these tragic attacks, the United States, supported by NATO allies, launched Operation Enduring Freedom. The primary goal was clear: to dismantle al-Qaeda and remove the Taliban from power, who had harbored terrorism. Initially, the campaign seemed to meet its objectives with swift victories. Kabul fell within weeks, and by December of 2001, the Taliban regime was toppled. However, what was hoped to be a quick military intervention evolved into one of the longest wars in American history. The rugged terrain of Afghanistan, a historical graveyard for many ambitious empires, posed severe challenges. The mountains and deserts became not just physical barriers but also metaphorical ones, as US and NATO forces grappled with a complex web of tribal politics and an ever-resilient insurgency. The Taliban, although removed from official power, regrouped and launched a persistent guerrilla warfare that drained resources and morale. As years turned into decades, the objectives seemed to blur amidst a cycle of surge and withdrawal of troops, reconstruction efforts, and attempts at nation-building. The Afghan War highlighted a poignant reality. Foreign powers found themselves navigating not just a physical landscape, but a socio-political labyrinth, deeply rooted in centuries of fierce independence and resistance. Despite technological and military superiority, the outcome remained consistent with history. What makes Afghanistan the graveyard of empires? Throughout history, Afghanistan has stood as a bulwark against some of the world's most powerful empires. From the Persians to the Mongols, the British, the Soviets, and more recently the Americans, each has tried and ultimately failed to subdue this fiercely independent land. This pattern of resistance and resilience is not merely coincidental, but deeply ingrained in the fabric of Afghan society. Geographically, Afghanistan is a fortress unto itself, bordered by towering mountain ranges, arid deserts, and rugged terrain. These natural defenses have historically served as both a shield and a tactical advantage, providing native fighters with superior knowledge and maneuverability. Culturally, Afghanistan is a mosaic of tribes and ethnic groups, each with a strong sense of identity and a long-standing tradition of warrior ethos. This has fostered a communal resilience and a readiness to unite against external threats, further complicating the task for invaders. Tactically, the Afghans have mastered the art of guerrilla warfare, using their intimate knowledge of the terrain to launch relentless ambushes and raids, wearing down much larger and better equipped armies over time. Afghanistan's rugged landscape and resilient people have shaped a history of indomitable defiance against the mightiest of empires.